Thank you and good morning, everyone. I'd like to call this meeting to order. On behalf of the board, I would like to acknowledge the land we are meeting on today is the traditional territory of the many First Nations, including Chippewas of Georgina Island and the Mississaugas of the Credit. These lands are now home to many diverse Indigenous people. We also acknowledge that York Region falls under Treaty 13 with the Mississaugas of the Credit and the Williams Treaties with several Mississauga Chippewas First Nations. Disclosure of interests. Confirmation of public minutes of April 27th, 2022, a board meeting. Mayor Pellegrini, could you kindly move that? Chair, could you kindly second that? All those, any opposition? Motion carries. No presentation, no deputations, communications. I need for 7.1 and 7.2, a mover to receive. Steve Renoff, would you like to move that? Thank you, very kind. And Mayor Pellegrini, you're seconding that. Any opposition? Motion carries. 7.2. Jennifer, would you like to move that? And let's see, Norma, would you like to second that? Thank you. And any opposition? Motion carries. And of course, let me take this opportunity, Jennifer, to congratulate you on another on the fact that you'll be staying with us for at least I say another 3 years, which is good news for the board. And on behalf of all members of the board, let me take this opportunity to thank you for obviously the great contribution you're making. And we look forward, all of us, to working together in the next for the next 3 years at least. Consideration and adoption of reports. Okay. For my conversations with some members and also the chief, the items that I pulled are 8.4, 8.5, and then a discussion on 8.6. So are there other members who would like to pull an item? Jennifer, please go ahead.
Thank you, Mauricio. Just very quickly, 8.1, please.
8.1. Okay, so we have 8.1, 8.4, 8.5, and 8.6. So I need a motion to approve, I guess, 8.2 and 8.3. Chair, would you like to do that? Chair Emerson? Thank you so much. Who would like to second that? Walter, please. Walter Purchell, thank you. Any opposition? Motion carries. So we'll take these items one by one. Jennifer, you called 8.1, so you get the floor.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you. And this is just a quick clarification for Jeff, please. Under benefits, I noticed that the retiree benefits this quarter is way over budget again, and because it just reminded me that the December 31 quarter, when we talk about this item, is also way over budget. So I'm just wondering, is there some activity that we did not foresee? So this may be by year end will be another 4 or 5 times over budget item. And then the other one is, I know that we support Ottawa, which is great. And we have the agreement for recovery of our costs. But page 19 and page 32 seem to suggest ones that we already been recovered, and then 32 said will be recovered. So I just want to clarify if that recovery has already come in and this overtime here is net of the recovery or it's before recovery.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, good morning to the board. On the first question about retiree benefits, that does continue to be a concern throughout 2022. So we are incurring above plan costs for that. We are working with our regional partners to address it for the 2023 budget process. We do expect to overspend that account significantly. As you've pointed out, we do expect overall wages to be within budget. So that entire, we're sort of working on managing to the bottom line of the wage category is what we're aiming for this year. So that's our strategy. We'll see it over budget throughout the year, Ms. Fang. The second question on the Ottawa deployment, we've billed through our financial accounting system an invoice to two invoices to Ottawa, which is why you're seeing it showing up on the revenue line. It is still it's an outstanding collectible right now. We expect payment in the summertime, per our most recent conversations with my peers at Ottawa. With that, I'll answer any other questions that you might have.
And a quick follow-up on the retiree benefits. Do we know any particular items that have been consumed a bit more than expected?
Thank you, Ms. Fang, and through you, Chair. Yeah, it is a matter of volume of retirees, as well as the rates that are being charged against those retirees to YRP. That rate setting process is one that we're in constant discussions with Office of the Budget at York Region, and that's the discussions that we have ongoing. Even this month, I believe we have an update with them. We spoke with them last maybe 2 weeks ago.
Thank you, Jeff. As always, great job.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Jen, would you like to move that for me? Thank you. What about Norma? Would you like to second that? Thank you so much. Any opposition? Motion carries. Now we proceed to 8.4. Deputy Chief Rouse, would you like to take care of that for us?
Yes, good morning, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Let me perhaps first start by introducing or identifying a name that is different on the list here this morning, and that is Superintendent Lisa Byrne of the Vancouver Police Department. She is joining us for this week, shadowing the chief as a part of her training and development. And we're also in discussions with her, picking her brain as to things that may be done differently here as opposed to Vancouver. So Lisa Burns is with us this morning, and she is a superintendent from the Vancouver Police Department.
Welcome.
As to the report of proceeds of crime, offense-related property, and civil remedies, just call on Jeff to make a few comments on this particular report. It is one that comes to the board for information, but I think it's worthy of mention in a couple of areas. Jeff?
Thank you very much, Deputy Rouse. And again, through you, Chair, distribution of forfeitures is one that we typically have an annual conversation on. This report is in front of you basically for compliance purposes to show you how the forfeiture process works and the outputs to York Regional Police through 3 grant processes. On an annual basis, however, we typically comment that the proceeds to municipal policing could be richer. And specifically, the province does have a splitting process between federally prosecuted forfeitures and provincially prosecuted forfeitures, with a portion of the proceeds going to the Ministry of Attorney General to offset costs around prosecutions, as well as to SolGen. SolGen then forwards a portion of those fees over to municipal policing through the proceeds of crime, the frontline policing grants. And as you can see, that the pieces received by the municipal level continue to be fairly low. The splits that the province do show suggests a higher split, between 18% for federally prosecuted forfeitures and up to 30% for provincially prosecuted forfeitures. So I just wanted to make that additional comment that we are encouraging our ministry partners to have a richer split to the municipal level. Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments from or questions from members of the board? Seeing none, may I have a mover and a seconder for this? Mr. Pritchard, would you like to move that? And Mayor Pellegrini, would you like to second that? Thank you very much. The recommendation that the board receive this report for its information, and any opposition, motion carries. Thank you. 8.5. 2021 annual statistics, 2022 business plan year 2 highlights. Deputy Chief Rouse, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is an annual statistical report for 2020 to 2022 for 2021, and the business plan for 2020 to 2022. There are some highlights on this report. that we'd like to point out, and I'll call on Superintendent Almeida just to touch on those aspects.
Morning, everyone, and through you, Mr. Chair. As the deputy indicated, this report combines both our second year objectives and actions in our 2020 to 2022 business plan, as well as our annual statistics report. And the purpose for this is that we, as police, undertake a broad array of both criminal and non-criminal work, and there's no single measure that reflects the overall effectiveness of our police performance. So traditional measures of performance include crime clearance rates and calls for service. However, it's important to assess how the goals and objectives of the organization's business plan have been met to gain a more comprehensive perspective of the overall effectiveness of our police service. The ongoing COVID-19 pandemic continued to have impacts on York Region communities and police interactions, most notably 2 periods of provincially mandated restrictions impacting capacity limits, affected administrative and operational processes. Despite the ongoing pandemic challenges, York Regional Police continued to build upon lessons learned from 2020 to ensure the safety of our members and maintain a high level of service delivery. We are on track to completing all 105 business plan activities identified for the 3-year planning cycle. All 11 single-year activities for year 2 were successfully accomplished. 11 out of the 15 activities projected across the first and second year were completed. All 26 activities for 2021 were completed, with the exception of 4 activities, 1 under our community pillar and 3 under our people pillar. All outstanding activities are near completion and expected to be accomplished during 2022. The highlights of the accomplishments that we've made can be found on Appendix A of the 2020-22 business plan year 2 highlights, as well as the outstanding can be found on Appendix A, table number 1. Specific performance measures under the business plan can be found on the attached Appendix B. Moving to our annual statistics report for January to December of 2021, we saw a total crime rate increase of 5.3%. The crimes against persons increased 9.4%, and the crimes against property rate increased 4.2%. And all other criminal code violations increased by 1.5%. We saw weapons violations decrease 9.5%, and drug violations increased by 9.4%. The total traffic violations increased 4.5%. We noticed that the overall clearance rate decreased 3.9%. These decreases in the clearance rate have been experienced by a number of our policing partners and is mainly attributed to multiple factors, but one stands out is that the changes have been made to the founded, unfounded categorizations that we report to Stats Canada. Citizens generated dispatches for service decreased by 1.2%, and the response time for our emergency calls increased by 1.5%. The crime rate increased overall after remaining steady in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic restrictions on people and businesses. Increases are seemingly coming back to pre-pandemic levels, which were observed in several crime categories. We saw significant increases in hate crime, cybercrime, drug violations, assault, theft over 5,000, motor vehicle theft, commercial break and enter, intimate partner violence, and impaired operations. The detailed breakdown of crime and other crime-related statistics can be found in the annual report, which is attached. And as I mentioned before, despite the 2 provincial lockdowns brought on by the pandemic, the organization has successfully adapted to meet the accomplishments and minimize interruptions to service delivery. York Regional Police continues to monitor our business plan activities and crime statistics to ensure York Region remains a safe community. We are well on track to meeting all our business plan commitments as we move into the final year of the plan. Despite the increases that we've seen in our crime statistics, York Regional Police has had many successes in 2021. We will remain diligent in monitoring the trends and being proactive in our enforcement, prevention, and community safety efforts. That, Mr. Chair, is our report, and I'll turn it over to you or and the rest of the board for any questions.
Thank you so much, Al. Appreciate that. Deputy Rouse, would you like to add anything to that report, or?
Well, the only comment is that this report is a year-over-year comparison. When we do look at our 5-year trend, we are tracking well in comparison over a 5-year period. So this is a year-over-year. Superintendent Almeida's comment as to this not being specific to York Region, but it's a trend that we see around the GTA with our other partners, I think is worthy of mention as well. We continue to focus on the business plan activities, and we continue to work on abating crime to the extent that is feasible, and organized crime and street level crimes, violent crimes will continue to be a focus of York Regional Police. Those are my comments.
Thank you so much. And Superintendent Almeida, thank you so much for your report. You know, one day we'll have to have a broader conversation about cause and effect as it relates to availability of resources, financial and otherwise, for the force, because at the end of the day, people react to any increase in crime rates. That's a known fact. People like to feel safe in their community. And when, you know, there is a spike in the crime rates, regardless of the type of crime, people have a certain reaction to it. And so we'll have to have a conversation down the road about how, you know, what type of, you know, what is the real cause of this increase. You know, there's a tendency when there's an economic downturn, crime seems to increase. I don't know if that is statistically, just get the impression that I get, and there are other causes for that. But we should have one day in a working session, and it's not an immediate issue right now, but just for our own education, to find out what are the causes of crime and what can we, in scenario building, what can we anticipate in our own region, because there are many changes occurring in our region, demographic and otherwise. That would be, I think, time well spent by the board. Jennifer?
Thank you, Maurizio, and I totally agree with this upcoming education session for the board. And in addition to understand the reasons for increasing crime, and I would assume a lot of it is external factors that are not necessarily controllable by our YRP. However, the other side is the clearance rate continue to decrease. So with the increasing on crime and decreasing on clearance rate, that gap is causing some concern, and I'm sure the public would like to understand, and as the board we would like to understand the reason of the decrease on the clearance rate. If you look at page 75, it's a 10-year trend. I really would like to understand. It's just not that pretty, and I'm sure there are very good reasons, and if the causes point to resources and budget, then the board is here to support. But let's understand with evidence-based analytics, please. Now we have 10 years data, and there are other couple observations. On page 72, for example, it's just great statistics, but the rate per 100,000 population, because it's right under clearance rate. Initially, I thought, oh, so this is the clearance rate per 100,000 population. But when I do the back of the envelope, it is actually the crime rate per 100,000 population. Right. So that's maybe right. Just make it clear the crime rate, and then if we want to add the clearance rate, so that it's just more complete as an observation. And then, as Elle mentioned, I think it's page 108 and 109, the two particular area, cybercrime and organized crime. The clearance rate both are pretty low, and I don't think we need to go into details, but either in the private session or later, would appreciate a bit more understanding of those trends, please.
Mr. Chair, through you, if I could answer that question real quickly. For those two categories alone, the significant challenge we face is that the offenders aren't local, so that we have a number of challenges when it comes to investigating these types of crimes. There has been traditional police methods that we were able to use previously that we're no longer able to use. So that would be one reason why cybercrime rates are difficult to clear, because they are transnational actors that are in play. So it's difficult for us to identify them, as you can imagine, with all the techniques that they use to hide their IP addresses and so on and so forth. And just quickly on the clearance rate issue, as we've identified before, the changes made back in 2018 to the way Stats Canada allows us to categorize clearances has had an impact significantly, in the sense that we have a number of people in relation to property crimes, for example, that are making reports just for insurance purposes only. There is no information, or very little information, to provide police in terms of potential suspects. And I believe Chief McSween mentioned this last year as well. It's just the sheer volume of reports that come in, and typically they come in via online with very little opportunity for the police to engage any witnesses, or to have a timely opportunity to canvass for any video evidence or any other evidence for that matter. So those do have a significant impact on our ability to prioritize the investigations that our members are able to tackle.
Thank you, Elle, for the additional information. And I'm wondering, for our report, since this is YRP generated statistical report, if the methodology is a major contributor, perhaps we could have since 2028, can we adjust the report, show another chart without that change, assuming same methodology as previous since 2012, what would the chart looks like? So I think that's full disclosure. It's that sometimes different CPI has different food products included in the basket, then people, the economists can say, yeah, if this is adjusted, the methodology, the CPI is this rate. Then I think maybe somewhere our team can consider adjusting the model to show if it's the same statistics calculation, what is this trend looks like, please.
I certainly can take it back to our team, Ms. Fang. I think the issue is that we are tied to the clearances established by the federal government. So they do impact the number of changes. For example, one of the clearances that would enter as unfounded would be insufficient evidence to proceed. So that comes in as unfounded. And where and there's other instances where the victim or the client, the complainant, refused to proceed. So it's out of our control in some instances, but we can certainly take it back and consider if there's a better way to report that. And thank you for your questions, because we were looking at some feedback here on how we can best present our performance to the board.
Yep. Thank you so much, Superintendent. And obviously, Jennifer, I encourage you to reach out, and if you want a further elaboration of some of the points that you've raised, that would serve the interest of the board quite well as well. Okay, Mr. Percha, would you like to move that? And Ms. Fang, would you like to second it? Any opposition? Motion carries. 8.6, Board Strategic Planning Session Service or External Facilitator, Report of Executive Director. I just want you to know that this particular item has been called just for clarification as to the sort of reason why we would engage an external facilitator. I think there was a bit of a confusion, and so I want that cleared up in a very brief discussion on this particular issue. And I'm going to go to the Executive Director for a brief update and explanation.
Thank you, Chair, and for you. I'm bringing forward this report at the request of the board to engage a third party to facilitate the strategic planning session that we've scheduled in September with the Executive Command team. And this is a report and recommendation for your consideration. Thank you.
And can you cite the reason as to what the role of the external facilitator would be? And it is in the report, and that basically Section 4, Service of External Facilitator. If there are any questions, let's get them asked and let's get some answers. Is there anybody concerned with this at all? If not,
Chairman,
the chair, actually the chair is the people that brought it up and he's correctly going to make some comments on it. We'll listen to Jennifer as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I asked for this from the last board meeting because I was unaware of Ms. Avelino and Ms. Fang's report coming to this and wanting to put a facilitator. I will not support the recommendation going forward. I don't believe it's needed at this time. I'm not sure why we would need a facilitator, even though it says it in the report. But I will not be able to make the meeting on June 14th when you will be having the strategic plan. Those are my comments, sir. I just don't support what
Okay.
Mr. Avelino are supporting.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Fang?
Thank you, Maurizio. Thanks, Wayne, for your comment. I just want to add some context that I believe the board and the ECT strategic meeting is no longer in June. It's sometime in September. Also, facilitated strategic discussion session for any board, it's quite popular in public-private sectors, and it is actually considered as one of the best practices. So this is nothing new. And if YRP has never done a facilitated strategic discussion, especially in lieu of upcoming new ad for the Police Services Board, strategic development is very much part of the key board's responsibilities. So I think this couple $1,000 will be very well spent for both the board and our YRP team. Having a facilitator does not in any way undermine the capability of our internal team. It's only try to get the best out of everyone, diversified mindset, experience, and perspectives. So I raised this, and this is the board's recommendation, not Jennifer Fang's recommendation. Of course, we respect any director who disagree. However, majority prevails.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fang. Would you like to move the motion? And do I have a seconder for that motion? Yes, Norma, thank you. Any opposition? Motion carries. Okay, now we move to unfinished business. Mafalda, you requested some comments on, you want to make some comments on this, an update on the Anti-Black Racism and Building Community Trust Committee. Please go right ahead.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I have just a brief update. We are on track to bring forward at the June board meeting a final report on the recommendations and a presentation as well. As you know, the board committee has been working on these recommendations for several months now, and we're very pleased with the progress so far. We've also met with YRP on a couple of occasions, and I think we have one more meeting with our ECT to just to have that collaboration for the final report. So we look forward to that in June.
Thank you. Mr. Purchell, would you like to move that receipt? And Norma, would you like to second that, please? Thank you so much. Any opposition? Motion carries. Any other business? Seeing no other business, we'll need a motion to convene in private for the purpose of considering confidential items pertaining to legal and personnel matters in accordance with Section 35(4) of the Police Services Act. Who would like to move that? Mr. Chair, would you like to move that? And Mr. Mayor Pellegrini, you second that? All those, any opposition? Motion carries. We'll just take